few years ago, you never would have believed it, but Jake Paul has actually fought Nate Diaz in boxing, and he won by unanimous decision, 97-92, and then two 98-91s. And this was a really fun fight, but I don't really want to start with that. I kind of want to start with the whole atmosphere of it, because this was a big fight in the sense that Nate Diaz is a big star, Jake Paul is a big star, but it's not necessarily marquee boxing, you know what I mean? And I thought that the walkouts were cool because Diaz had E40 and Jake, Lil Durk. The crowd was insane the whole time. But what did you think of just like the atmosphere of this fight before it even started?
Yeah. I mean, you can't really like say like you didn't see like that good of a turnout coming. Like it's Nate Diaz this time around. So like just based off that, like the Diaz army is obviously gonna be maybe if not fully invested, because like. I mean, like, I don't, like, I would be lying if I said, like, I'm 100% on how, like, the Diaz brothers fan base, like, core fan base actually is, whether or not they are, like, where they are, like, at this point in time, I guess, skeptical of, like, their careers, or, they're just Diaz army for life, like, it doesn't matter, so... But I mean, for this, like...
I think we learned that it is Diaz Army for life. And
yeah.
I'm glad that that's the case, 'cause that's how I feel.
Yeah, it is good to see that. But, I mean, like, tactically and stuff, I guess coming in is kind of... For me, I guess, kind of hard to, like, give Nate Diaz that edge. And then, yeah, so the fight happens, and...
Yeah, what'd you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, like... I think this time around, like, it's nice to get a little more, I guess, clarity on Jake Paul as a boxer after the Tommy Fury fight, because I still wasn't sold after that. But here, like, you're saying, like, he is working on, like, he is fine-tuning his game, and you can see it throughout each fight.
I think going the 10 rounds is big, too, because if you think about it, like, this is, his 8th pro fight? 8th or 9th? And most boxers at that point are fighting like 4 to 6 rounds, and he just fought 10 versus a guy. Like, I know Nate Diaz isn't a boxer, but he can fight, you know what I mean? And he's got hands. So I thought that was pretty impressive, honestly. I thought both guys did really well.
This is the path that Jake Paul is indeed going down, then I think we gotta see more guys like at his weight class matching up against him, because it's cool and all for the big name, the former star and all that to step in and, accept the challenge, get the payday and all that. But Jake Paul has made it very clear he intends on becoming a world champion by 2026.
I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm paraphrasing here too, and.
Yeah, I know he said he wants Canelo and stuff like that.
26 is obviously, like,
it's fairly
a few
close.
years away. But, like, also, yeah, fairly, for a sport like this, like, he's got a rude awakening, I think. And
I think it might be tough.
Yeah, because, it just kind of feels like, obviously, with, his involvement with the PFL and had his, his own promotion, like, itself, like, I just don't even think he has even that time. Even if he was 100% like dedicated and stuff to becoming a world champ, like I really don't even find it plausible at all, honestly.
I just don't know where the stepping stone is, you know what I mean? Because like, yeah, these are impressive in a way because this guy came from like YouTube and internet fame, and then just hopped into boxing, and now he's beating
I mean, in terms of like... Where
does the jump happen?
In terms of like, obviously, the content creating scene of boxing, like, he's pretty above, like, everyone else. Like, I think
he's the only one who's actually, like, kind of good.
Yeah, he's,
Sam Hyde got that win, though, if you remember. We talked about that back in the day. Shout out.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, that went over my head. Damn, imagine that.
Oh, that'll never happen. I'm pretty certain of that one. But anyway.
Yeah, Sam Hyde will be too old anyways, so
might be a bit above his weight class too.
Well, yeah, but Yeah, man. I mean, just I guess to just circle back to the whole weight class thing. Yeah, I think now like we got to really start like if we really like because I mean I'm not all too familiar with like all that up to speed with the ranking system and whatnot. So Jake Paul is a ranked fighter now, if I'm not mistaken.
No, definitely
No.
not. No way. That'd be
Oh,
crazy.
I thought like
Unless
at
it goes
least
down to like 100. No, I don't think so. That would to be. He hasn't beaten a single pro boxer,
yeah.
and like
then
these
I'm
guys
saying
aren't probably sanctioned by
I
like.
saw I don't because I'm thinking back to after the Tommy Fury fight. I was seeing all this,
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess just propaganda now about Jake Paul and how like oh he's legit now, like he's got a Fury under his belt.
I saw someone say that the UFC is just gonna say fuck it and send in Alex Pereira to beat his ass. I was like, dude, could you imagine? That's a fight that I would not pick Jake to win in the ring. But in terms of the fight itself, I thought the fight was fun because Nate was in like real trouble early. I thought Jake was doing a good job at range and just kind of keeping him on the end of his punches. But then it seemed like after the knockdown, which when you really thought like in round 5 that Nate might have been done, it seems like after that he turned it up completely, and that was when he started to win rounds. And up close, Nate was doing really well. In the clinch, doing with the dirty boxing, I thought he was landing a lot of shots. It ended up being a good scrap at the end of it. Like Jake clearly won, but we saw a lot from Nate in this one, and Jake, honestly.
Yeah, I mean that's really all it ends for there, right, in terms of the boxing, because now we shift over to the MMA side of this little deal of theirs.
Hey, I mean, we
And
kind of slipped into that in the fight, though. Nate's little guillotine
oh
that he
yeah,
threw in there. I thought that
I
was
think
so
he was
funny.
just giving Jake a preview of the
Keep him honest.
how it's gonna be like in the octagon.
God,
But
that'd be so funny. I hope it does happen in MMA. I don't
I
think
think
it
it
will.
will. I think it will, but I don't
Really,
think it's
really?
gonna happen really much like anytime all
Soon?
that soon.
It's tough because like Jake signed with the PFL, so if he fights in the MMA, it has to be in the PFL. So Nate would have to go there, and Jake said what $10 million he'd give him. But Nate, if he goes to the PFL, I think that's like a seismic thing. I think Nate's worth more than that, honestly. Like
Yeah.
the UFC was paying him around that, and that was before all this. If Nate were to go to the PFL, like the PFL is already starting to compete in America now with the UFC, with like Francis Ngannou, Jake Paul, and like all these big names that are starting to go there. But if Diaz goes there, that's big. You know what I mean? So especially if he fights Jake Paul in like that super fight division, oh my God, I think that could be crazy for them, and I think Nate knows that. So that's why like I'm a little skeptical, because I think he'd want to do it, but at the same time, I think he knows his worth, and he might be able to leverage between PFL and the UFC, or even boxing. I don't know if he has like any aspirations there, but outside of Jake Paul, I'm not sure if he really does, but I don't know. Like, so you said you think it is, like you think it will happen at some point in MMA, even if it's not soon.
Yeah.
So if you're saying it's not going to happen soon, do you think that that's more because of Jake or because of Nate?
That it's not gonna.
Yeah, like who's like the one holding it? Like, is it going to be Jake doing other things, or is it Nate going back to like the UFC for McGregor? Like, there's so many things that can happen.
Maybe Nate. I think probably Nate. I think it'll be Nate's end.
That's how I kind of feel.
I feel like Jake Paul would just want to get it over with, you know.
To be honest with you, I think more time benefits him because he has more time to work on the ground game.
Yeah.
And Nate has fights in the UFC that he could have in the meantime. So that means you could have McGregor, Poirier, Gaethje, any of these guys. I mean, who wouldn't want to see Nate Diaz against any of like the more fun fights at 155 or 170? But at the same time, I know one of the things he was saying, he really wants to keep co-promoting, which makes me think it's more likely that he actually goes to the PFL than the UFC, because the UFC will never let that happen. PFL might. They might go for that. So, I don't know. I think that's mainly what holds it up. But if Diaz goes to the PFL, that's like... that's huge news, man. Mm-hmm. We thought the Ngannou news was gigantic. Oh my God, if we see that, that'd be unreal. But I don't know. Let me ask you this: who were you more impressed by in this fight? Because Jake, I thought did well through the adversity, and then like I said, going the 10 rounds, that's pretty impressive for a guy with like that little amount of fights. But then Diaz, to get rocked as many times as he did early in this fight, and to fight back and have that signature cardio and toughness, and to give Jake a fight in the end, I think like both guys got like a dub in some sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I feel the same way. I mean, I guess the more unexpected performance would be Nate Diaz. I guess whether or not you expect him to just look, slower and whatnot out there. I guess with the hands maybe as the fight went on. But I mean, I think Jake Paul capitalized on the spots that were there for him, and he landed some good punches, and that adds up, and then that's how you get your hand raised. And yeah, but it would have been like, yeah, I don't think a knock, seeing Nate Diaz get knocked out,
That would have been fun.
yeah, I would have been.
I will say this, and like MMA fans are gonna be pissed or they won't care. I think it's pretty like polarizing either way at this point with Jake Paul, but you got to give the guy credit. Like even if it's not for the fighting, like just this dude was talking like 2 years ago about wanting to fight Nate Diaz, and like he just made that happen, which is crazy. That's why I kind of started the show with like, who would have thought that this was actually gonna happen at some point? Like he was saying this back when he fought like Nate Robinson, and now we're here and we're talking about it, and he won. Like it's not like he just had the fight, he won, and impressively too. Those scorecards, they reflect it. They're pretty far apart. So, just honestly, good job to him. I know a lot of MMA fans don't like him, but and I understand it, believe me. But the dude's business sense, his marketing skills, it's unreal. And now the world is kind of his oyster. I mean, you can pick another MMA fighter. You have Nate, maybe Connor. I doubt it though. But then even in the YouTube game, you got KSI. There's still the Fury rematch. Like there's so many things. And even for Nate, like I said before, McGregor, Poirier, Gaethje, or somebody at 170. So good job to both of them. And we'll see what happens in the future with this content creator boxing game. But we'll see y'all.